Hi, I'm Michael Scott, Communications Generalist for Aurora, and you're listening to the Happy Hippie Jesus Show with Bill and Jeremy.
We actually have a first ever today, Bill. We have two guests. We have Michael and Stacy with us. And since it's our first time ever with two guests, I think we can have another first, and I'll let you ask the Jesus question.
Cool. I get to ask the Jesus question today. Guys, Jeremy and I have a disagreement. I say that Jesus is a hippie, and Jeremy says that Jesus was a boring old square. So what do you guys say?
First of all, before I start calling Jesus names, I want to know how you define hippie.
Well, that is entirely up to you, Stacy. That's how we roll here. It's entirely up to you.
Well, I would say if you're going on looks, with the longer hair and the sandals, kind of like Bill, how you look today.
And every day.
That I would say Jesus might be a hippie. Also, I think hippies are peacemakers, and I see Jesus as being a peacemaker.
All right. What say you, Michael Scott?
I say if we take the whole concept that Jesus is everyone, then of course he would be a hippie.
No. Michael went deep on us.
You know what?
A deep thinker
That's
for
how
the
you answer
first
your
time
question you
ever.
really don't know the answer to.
You know what, Jeremy? I think we can actually give you a point on that, too, because Michael gave Jesus is everybody, so Jesus can be both, a hippie and not a hippie.
That means I'm winning 2-1 in 2019.
Well, no, because I got 2 points, too, because he said Jesus was a hippie as well.
Oh.
So it's 2-2 in 2019.
You keep math like a square.
I keep math like a winner. So you guys are with Aurora. What does Aurora stand for?
Well, Aurora is the Arkansas Regional Organ Recovery Agency. And I'm sorry I didn't introduce, this is Stacy Robinson, who is our workplace liaison.
Yeah, you should have introduced Stacy because Stacy is awesome.
That's right.
Well, we have a few questions we want to ask you guys today because what you guys do is super important. I'm very connected to this because my mother received a donation of lungs that saved her life as well. So it's close to my heart. So tell us a little bit about what Aurora is and what it does. You might even start with what Aurora stands for. It's not like the Aurora Borealis, right?
Right, that's right. Aurora is the Arkansas Regional Organ Recovery Agency, and we recover organs and tissues for transplant. Mike, I'll let you.
And we're the official organ procurement organization for Arkansas. We cover just about the entire state of Arkansas, except for the parts that's closest to Memphis and Louisiana, because those people tend to go to the hospitals in those states. But we have a contract with just about every hospital in the state of Arkansas, and we are who they call when someone is becoming or potentially to become an organ donor.
Well, how did you guys get involved with Aurora? I mean, you didn't just wake up one day and go, I'm going to go and recover organs, or did you?
Well, no, not quite that easily, right? I had a similar job too. I always joke and say, because my job I had before this, I was the Secretary of Elections for the state of Arkansas. So I had the job to ask the two questions when you go to the DMV. Do you want to register to vote? And do you want to become an organ donor? So that's kind of how I got into it. I've kind of been in the service field for most of my life. And I thought this would be a great opportunity to really help give back to the community.
We can do this either way. You can tell me how your faith and understanding of Jesus shapes what you do, or how working for Aurora has helped shape your faith or your understanding of Jesus.
Organ donation is it's a very personal decision. I have been an organ donor registered since I first got my driver's license. To me, it is the last opportunity that you have on this earth to show agape love for others by leaving a lasting legacy. And I think most of us want to leave this world a better place than we found it. And through organ and tissue donation, you have the opportunity to possibly save up to 8 lives or enhance hundreds of lives through tissue donation. So it's a beautiful way to leave a legacy and leave the world a better place.
So you'd almost say that part of what you guys do would be offering resurrection to some people. I know my mother, when she was waiting for her organ donation, she couldn't do anything. I mean, she'd gotten so weak that basically she just stayed in the apartment that they were renting next to the hospital and waited for her organ donation. And now she's back working again. It's almost like a resurrection for her.
Yes.
It does give people a second chance in life, because you have to, because there are some people that, may have had not gone that path that we all try to follow in the first part of their lives, and something happens to them that causes them to need an organ transplant. But when they get that organ transplant, they're more, they're happier to go out and spread good news. And we have a lot of people who do say that God and Jesus has given them a second chance in life, and they go out to do this work for the Lord to spread this word of donation, that this is what giving is. And Jesus was about giving and total selfless love. So how much more selfless could you be than giving someone the gift of life?
Without violating HIPAA laws, can you tell us a story or a couple of stories about how it's changed someone's life or transformed someone's life?
One of the stories I know is when I first started working here, people are always kind of freaked out about eye donation when people do cornea transplants. And we ask people to donate corneas for eyes and different things like that. So I know there was this lady who was having a cornea transplant, and she had a 6-month-old, and she had never been able to see. But once she got her transplant, she was able to see her baby for this first time. There are children who've had transplants there's a little boy who had cancer in his arm, and in that bone, they were going to have to amputate his arm. But because somebody donated bone, they were able to find just a piece of bone to put in his arm, so they wouldn't have to amputate his entire arm. And he just got a piece of bone, and he grew back, and he was able to. So those are different, just a couple of stories about people who wouldn't have had that chance in life if somebody else hadn't been selfless enough to donate.
Can people actually pick and choose what they want to donate, or is it all or nothing?
No, you can pick and choose. We actually have on our website, www.DonateLifeArkansas, you can sign up. We do it like an account. You can pick to choose if you want to be an organ donor, a tissue donor. You can actually designate which organs you would like to donate, or you can say just, I want to donate everything.
Okay.
And Bill will put that in the show notes because Bill does all the work.
All the work. I've got a personal question. Jeremy, his heart's 3 sizes too small. Can we put him on a donor list? I mean, can we put him on there to receive? Actually, his heart's just 3 sizes too small. He's as close to the Grinch as you're going to get.
Well, actually, I'm glad you said that, because we are not able to put anyone on the transplant list. And that's one of the things that we try to clarify. The person, if you're going to put on a transplant, it's done by your personal doctor. Your doctor determines if you're in need. Your doctor and a specialist determine if you're on the transplant waiting list.
We got to call your doctor.
So we got to call your doctor, Jeremy.
While we're clearing up some other myths, Bill told me that if I signed up to be an organ donor, I was going to wake up in a bathtub full of ice.
No, this is not 7 pounds. No, if you wake up in a tub of ice, it's because you got in a tub of ice yourself. No.
Well, what are some myths about organ donation that detract people from donating? Besides I'll wake up in a tub of ice and my organ will be sold on the black market.
Well, our number one myth is that if I'm in a car wreck and I get to the hospital and I have an organ donor on my driver's license, and somebody's there rich who's waiting on an organ, they're going to let me die to save them. And I always dispel that myth by telling people hospitals are in business to do 2 things. One is to save lives, and the other is to make money. And they basically stop making money on you when they sign time of death on your death certificate. So in their best interest to keep you going as long as possible, to charge you for those $15 bedpans, those $30 Tylenols. So that's what I try to explain. And actually, you have to be in pretty good health to become an organ donor also.
So Bill's out.
So Michael, what hospital are you going to where they're only charging you $30 for a Tylenol? Because that's where I need to go.
We're talking about the hospital discounts, The discount.
Oh, y'all are in.
Yeah. Only $15 for my bedpan.
Are there any other myths that you hear a lot that you want to take on? Or
I hear from a lot of people, they'll say, oh, I have, for example, diabetes. I can't donate my organs. Or they assume because they have a medical condition that they will not be able to donate organs or tissue. And that is a myth. The only automatic rule out is cancer if it has not been in remission for 5 years. Any other automatic rule outs?
Full-blown AIDS.
Full-blown AIDS.
Full-blown AIDS
So,
is automatic. Now we've even transferred, but we've even had transplants from HIV to HIV, so it has to be pretty severe for the person not to.
right. So, and even a lot of times when we're out and talking to people, and if they have had cancer, but it has been in remission for over 5 years, then we tell them you can go ahead and re-register because you never know.
We always tell people, let us rule you out, don't rule yourself out.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, we had a gentleman in our church that just received a liver transplant,
Yes.
and he got a hepatitis C liver, and they're able to treat it now
That's exactly right.
and cure the hepatitis C, and he's doing great. I mean, he's
Yes.
put weight back on. He's almost to the point where he's lifting weights again. So
Oh, that's
it's
wonderful.
amazing. It's amazing.
It is.
That we are able now to transplant hepatitis C to hepatitis C because it won't make them any worse. And now they're able to treat hepatitis, so it's really making it a big splash in the field.
Yeah, he wasn't even hepatitis C, but they asked him. They said, "Hey, do you want it?" And he's like, "Are you kidding?" Yes.
Yeah.
They're able to treat it now to suppress the hepatitis now.
And years ago, that wouldn't have happened, but they are making strides every day. So, something that was true maybe 5 years ago, it's not, may not be true today.
How many hospitals do you guys work with in Arkansas?
We work with about 90 to about 90, 95 hospitals in the state of Arkansas. We have a contract with just about every hospital in the state because it's a federal law that we must offer the option of donation to someone who is a potential organ donor. So we're not chasing ambulances. We had the hospitals actually call us when somebody is progressing to brain death or has progressed to brain death, but they don't call us beforehand, and we don't make a determination if that person is becoming brain dead or not. That is done by their doctor. Our doctors don't come onto the scene until after the person is pronounced brain dead by their physician.
And unless their doctor's name is Kevorkian, they should be okay.
They should be okay. Yeah, they should be okay because their doctors. No doctors want to have a bad death rate percentage.
No.
Trust me, that's not something they want. So
they're life givers.
They're life givers. They're trying to do it as much as possible to save that person. Then they exhaust all means until the end.
Do y'all know how many transplants are done on average in Arkansas a year?
We average between 60 and 70 transplants a year. We have about 25,000 deaths in the state. We get about 12,000 calls. About 5,000 of those actually are cases we actually qualify that we look into. Out of that, we only average about 60 to 70 organ donors a year, though. So it's a 99% chance that once you register that you won't become an organ donor. You have less than 1% chance to actually become an organ donor, to die in a manner that you become an organ donor.
Wow.
Because how many people die in a manner where they're brain dead, have a heartbeat, and on a ventilator.
Wow.
And nothing else is wrong with it.
Well, Jeremy's dream has always been to break the law and get away with it. So what he wanted to know was, once an organ is recovered, how long before it has to be at a hospital to be transplanted? Because he'd love to be a driver and be able to speed and do that.
Well, you probably have an easier time breaking the law just by jaywalking. That's probably be an easier one you could probably get away with and still feel like a rebel. But
I'm not the one trying to be.
Dude, we're into peace and love.
All of our transplantations are time sensitive. And it counts from the time that we recovered from someone to the time we transplant to someone else. So each organ actually has different time. Your kidneys can last up to 72 hours. They're the longest lasting. But your heart only has like 6 hours, and your lungs have like 8 hours. So while we're getting ready to recover, we're actually in the midst of that process that we're finding a recipient, At the same time, getting them to their hospital and getting them time to get prepped and getting their surgical team together. That all takes place in the same manner of time that we're prepping this person and going through their medical social history to recover.
So it's an in-depth process.
It's once it starts working, we have several moving pieces that have to combine, because we actually send a family service counselor on site first to assess the patient to see if that person is a potential organ donor, and then one of our, not family service counselors, one of our organ procurement coordinators, and then we send a family service counselor on site to talk to the family. And in the state of Arkansas, a few years ago, they passed a law that said that if you're registered to become an organ donor, nobody can take that right away from you. But till that time, we did what was called next of kin. We would ask the closest next of kin and go by their wishes, regardless if the person was in our registry or not. But now we go in, if they're in our registry, as presumed consent, and we just need to inform the family that we're following your loved one's last wishes.
Do family members ever object, or?
Rarely. We've had one or two. It's the law, and there's nothing they really can do, but we try not to upset families. So we try to explain to them, this is what your loved one wants. And most people don't want to go against their loved one's last wishes.
Well, and that brings up another point, is that one of the most important things you can do is talk to your family members or your close friends about your wishes. So when the time comes, it's not a surprise to your family or your loved ones.
My dream is to have a Viking funeral, and I'm an organ donor. Can I still have a Viking funeral after I've donated my organs?
Please invite me.
I told my kids I want the TV in there because you're supposed to be buried with your treasures.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yes. Bill's the best Methodist pastor. His theology is really sound around funerals.
That would be awesome. Yes, you can. You could have a Viking funeral if you wanted to, though. You could have an open casket and all that. Whenever I go speak, I always tell people, you've probably been to a funeral of a person who has been an organ donor. You cannot tell. We ask for all the where to make our what kind of short sleeve, long sleeve, so we can make the proper incisions in the right places. If we do recover bone, we actually put in prosthesis so that you can't tell at all. Our incisions are made underneath the arm, or if we're taking something from the back. If we recover skin, it's always from the back. And one of the things that people always worry about is their eyes. And I tell people, you have to explain to them, your eyes are 75% water. They're going to shrivel up regardless when you pass away. And they're going to put prosthesis in regardless. So I always tell people, it's not something that's not going to happen regardless if you're an eye donor or not. A lot of times, sometimes we just recover the cornea, which is the little thin lens of color around your eyes. So we don't always recover the entire eye. So a lot of times we just recover the cornea. So it's not really that. I always tell people, if you go to a funeral and you go in and the person has their eyes open, you probably need to leave. You probably need to leave. It's probably not the place the funeral type of thing, your funeral you want to go to.
Exactly. We are a Christian podcast, so we got to ask some Christian questions. So would you consider organ donation as an act of discipleship?
Yes, absolutely. An act of, as I said before, it's an act of agape love. And even in our social principles in the Methodist Book of Discipline, it is organ and tissue donation is supported by the United Methodist Church. And so, yes, I do think it is.
Bill, I want more people to listen than just your family. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a contest to encourage people to rate us on iTunes.
Wouldn't it just be my family rating us on iTunes?
But then other people can see it, and they'll help us expand and grow our show so more people can experience the idea of Jesus not being a hippie. Or being a hippie, or whatever happens.
Oh, so what we could do is we could ask people to take a screenshot of them rating us on iTunes or Apple Podcast and then email it to thehappyhippiejesusshow@gmail.com. That's thehappyhippiejesusshow@gmail.com. And they could win something?
Yeah, but we got to give them something worth winning.
Oh, I got it. They could win their choice of either a t-shirt or coffee mug featuring either Jeremy the White Butterfly, the Happy Hippie Jesus, or even Bill the Happy Hippie Jesus Christmas Elf.
Do you think anybody would really want that stuff?
I don't know. It's worth a try.
Let's go for it.
Woohoo! Now back to the show.
I think that's the first time someone's ever quoted the social principles or the Book of Discipline on our podcast. So
Yes, it is.
Surprise.
Props to you, Stacy.
Well, I'm going to tell you, when I first started working at Aurora, I was sitting around talking with my husband after dinner, and I'm like, I wonder what the Methodist view is on organ donation. And my husband had asked for a Book of Discipline for Christmas the year before. Now, who does that? I don't know, but
I'm a
He did.
pastor and I don't.
I know. I mean, right? So I'm like, okay, let's get it down. And then it was in there. And so I love that. Yes.
For future reference, so you know this, if he ever asks for a Book of Discipline again, you can get leather-bound books of discipline.
I'm not even going to tell him about it.
My first year as a pastor, I bought one thinking, oh, yeah. And then I realized they replace them every 4 years.
Yes, they do. It's time for an update.
Can you tell a story, or is there a story about how, I guess, the choice to be an organ donor has impacted a family or a family's faith? Has that ever come up?
I think it does come up frequently, and I think to one of our donor families who it can be so healing for the family for their loved one to be a donor, and it gives them hope. One of the stories I can think of is that in 2014, one of our donor family members, their daughter passed away unexpectedly, and it was on Christmas Eve. And they have said that was not the Christmas miracle that they were looking for or that they had always been taught about. But with that, she was able to donate several organs, one of them being her heart, which actually went to a woman who was also a mother. This donor family and the recipient got to meet, and now they are united as a family. It's just very moving. It has given that family hope and actually a whole new family that they have as well. So and Mike has said this before, that we've never heard of anybody saying they regretted the decision to have their loved one donate organs. But I have heard people say, I wish we would have been able to or donated organs. So it gives them hope and healing.
That brings up an interesting question. How does HIPAA play into all this with someone who wants to find out who donated the organ?
So in order for you to meet your recipient or your donor family, and here in Arkansas, a letter is written, and this usually occurs like after the first year. It can occur sooner, but usually after the first year. A letter is written, it goes through Aurora, we pass it on to the donor family member or recipient, and then has to be a mutual agreement.
Is that something that happens a lot, or is it something that usually the donor family is a little bit hesitant to meet the recipient?
It's a variety of things. It doesn't happen a lot, because some people it takes them more time to get past but some people are wanting to thank recipients. Are usually really wanting to thank the donor families. You have some but you also have some that feel guilty, which they feel like someone else has had that. This family has had to go through this tragedy for them, but we always tell people they didn't go through the tragedy for you. They went through the tragedy because that's what they had to do. What they did do, they were kind enough in that trying to find some peace and love to honor and give you a gift. So we try to make it that the donor families, sometimes it takes them some time to heal, but sometimes you got donor families who want to know how their loved one was able to help. So it really just depends on the family themselves. Like they say, it has to be mutual on both sides. Sometimes you have one side really wanting but we'll pass letters. They can still receive letters through the transplant hospitals, and we'll pass our letters on to transplant hospitals. Transplant hospitals will pass letters on to the families, or if the recipients will send letters to and they'll send them to us, and we'll give them to the donor families. So it has to be something that both people. But since I've been here, we've had a few families that be able to meet, and that is a wonderful thing to see people who, listening to their loved one's heart than someone else, or just how families come together. You have two families, like one in northwest North Arkansas and one in South Arkansas, who never would have met or had anything in common, and now they're together every Christmas, every holiday, celebrating that choice that someone else made.
I know that when we were praying for my mother to receive her lungs, one of the challenges was, am I actually praying for somebody to die so that my mother can receive these lungs? And where I came down was, no, what I'm praying for is, in a tragedy, that God can make something good happen within somebody's tragedy.
Exactly right.
That's exactly right.
I always tell people, they were like, but I felt like we prayed for it. No, you pray for something good to happen out of, and it just happened to be something not so good had to happen before the great had happened.
And the not so good was going to happen.
It was going to happen. That's right.
Your work at Aurora, can you tell us if it has, and if it has, how it has shaped your faith?
It's very humbling to see the acts of kindness, and then also to see our staff and the way that they give and the care that they give, and the way that our aftercare department cares for those family members. You just see the Lord in that, and it makes you have a stronger faith. And then as you hear or see these families going through the tragedies, of course, I just always feel the need to lift them up and to pray for them and their healing and their comfort. I think it has made my faith grow to see the acts of kindness come from strangers.
I would have to agree with that. Just the fact that we have an event that we call Hope for the Holidays, and we do every year. And when you see people come together, and it's for all of these families have had something tragic happen to them. Just they've lost a loved one, but when they come together and you see this outpour of love for each other, it's something that really, really defines that people, no matter what their backgrounds, can still come together, and they find that spiritual love of together, of giving, and you can do for your fellow man. So it reinforces that feeling of you that we are all one.
Can you talk a little bit about what Hope of the Holidays is?
The event that we do every year for our donor families who've had lost in the last 3 years. We ask them, we have a nice reception dinner for them, and we have a slideshow where we show their loved ones, because one of the things we like to do is we've heard that people say once their loved one is gone, they don't hear their name anymore. They don't hear their name mentioned. So we try to have things where you hear your loved one's name mentioned, you see their picture, and we're giving them the honor that they deserve for becoming an organ donor. And so that's an event where we're able to express a small piece of gratitude that we have for these families, and to bring them together, so that we know a lot of families, this is the first time that they're not going to have this loved one during the holidays.
I think so many times people might think that they are going through this alone, and when you bring those family members together, they realize they're not going through it alone, and there are other people there that are going through the same thing. And it's also hopeful that you might see a family member, maybe one of our volunteers or ambassadors that lost their loved one 10 or 15 years ago. And you look at them and you go, they made it. They're still here. They're functioning. They have made it. And so I think that helps a lot to see others that have gone before them.
And this event does for some people too. It actually gives them a way to help other families that are going through this tragedy. They can see it gives them a purpose. Now they may not have had. We have a donor family council, which is made up of donor families that help other new donor families and help with donor family events. So that gives them more of a purpose, like a mission for their love through their loved one.
You were talking earlier about faith, and that brings up our, when Mike mentioned our donor family council and our volunteers. When you see their strength and their courage and them sharing their stories, They are absolutely amazing people. That really is faith building.
It seems like working for Aurora has shaped your faith and also your understanding of grief and finding comfort and healing after that. I think it's something as a society we don't do well. We don't understand grief well, and we don't do the best job of carrying people through that time of loss. So it was really awesome to hear you talk about some of the things you do to reach out and to help connect and help families move through that.
And with the world moving so fast, there's always when you lose someone, everybody else keeps moving. So it needs to be someone who stops and, gives you that understanding or just the ear that you need at that point. And we try, as an organization, that's who we try to become.
Now, Stacy, Michael told us how he got connected with Aurora. You didn't tell us, and I know that you used to work at Camp Aldersgate.
Yes.
And I didn't know it, but the Aurora offices are just down the road. Is that why you chose this? Because you could just...
my car just automatically came this way, and it was just a perfect fit. Now, I dearly love Camp Aldersgate, and it's so near and dear to my heart. But I was at a point in my career where I was ready for a move. Interestingly enough, as I said, I've always been registered as an organ donor. And for most people, you do it. I did it, and I never thought anything else about it. My father passed away in 2013, and he was able to donate his corneas. And that was before I started working at Aurora, and it was my first interaction with anybody from Aurora. My father lived his life serving others, and so wanted to continue that. I saw this job opportunity, and it was working with businesses. And I was born and raised in Little Rock and have, a lot of business connections and have been in Rotary forever. And so I thought, that sounds like something I could do. And a strong believer, and had such a positive interaction with Aurora, with my father, and thought, I think I want to do that. So I did apply and was able to get the job and work with businesses. So what I do, Bill, is I work with businesses across the state and educate their employees on organ and tissue donation and talk to them about the myths that we've talked about today, and, just have conversations with them. And we do it in fun ways, like we'll go in and do a lunch and learn or an ice cream social or participate in their benefits fair and try to make it a fun, interactive experience where people can ask those questions before the time comes and they can make their own decision. Anyway, that's just kind of how I came to be here.
Do you think ice cream would make our show better?
Ice cream makes everything better.
I can't think of an instance where ice cream doesn't work.
So you would have been happier if we had brought ice cream with us, right?
Pretty much.
Well, are there any other events or anything else coming out that you want to make people aware of?
Well, we have kicked off our latest campaign, which is Save 8 Donate, which is telling people they can save up to 8 lives by donating organs. So right now we're going around the state. We're pushing our new campaign, letting people know, spreading the word of awareness. We will have the Rose Parade coming up pretty soon. Every year we have a Donate Life float. Not us, but there's a Donate Life float that all the organ procurement organizations send a donor family out to, and they participate. We have a family that we're sending out there this year that we're not sending, but we usually send a family. One of our tissue processors actually ran a nationwide contest, and we entered one of our families, and they won. So they will be representing Arkansas in Pasadena and during the Rose Parade.
In talking today, what I've kind of gathered is there's no such thing as a perfect organ donor because everybody's different that receives an organ. So anybody truly can be an organ donor, right?
That's right. Because you have people always say, what are our ages? But everybody, you can be any age and need an organ transplant. So usually we have all donors of all ages when we get calls.
You don't want Jeremy's heart because it's 3 sizes too small.
I don't know, it might be somebody who needs a heart that's 3 sizes too small. So
Yeah, someone your height.
I'm not gonna tell Jeremy. So we do transplants on size and weight. So maybe too small for a big guy, but it might be the right size for a small guy.
Yeah. The Grinch may need one too.
Yeah, there you go.
There are organizations like this in just about every state, right? Do you guys partner with organizations outside of Arkansas?
We do some things with them. As far as all the OPOs kind of work in conjunction. We all work from off the United Network organ sharing list. So say when we have an organ case in Arkansas, we're actually trying to place those organs closest to home first. But if we don't have a recipient that matches, then we're going to move out as far as we can travel within that time frame, because we want to maximize the gift that someone has chosen, and we don't just want to discard it. So we're trying to maximize the gift no matter where it has to go. But we do try to place closest to home first, and then we move out the radius.
See, Jeremy, your fast and furious dreams can be a reality.
But we're not going to be on the commercial airline. You will never see one of us getting on the plane next to you in the seat next to you with a red cooler. So
that's another myth.
That's another myth.
No, that's a Hollywood thing.
That's a Hollywood thing. We actually, because we have a short time frame from the time we recover to transplantation, we actually have to charter small aircrafts to go places, or we have to have limo services to drop us to these places so we won't waste time.
We know that people can make a difference by being donors. What else can they do if they want to support organizations in their area like ARORA?
The number one thing is to spread the word, because this is not something. How many times have people gone to get their driver's license? They get there and they're asked and they say, yeah, and go home and never speak about it. They never mention it to their mother, their wives, their kids, anybody. So if something, God forbid, tragic happens to them and they have organ donor, and and their family doesn't know anything about it. So we say spreading the word and talking to your families, as Stacey said before, are really the two most important things about organ tissue donation.
They really should at the DMV give away T-shirts that say organ donor.
Would love to, but they told me that was a no-no. It's kind of too expensive.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for this time today. Y'all have really gave some fantastic insight into this process, and made us feel better about going into flea bag motels that we won't wake up in bathtubs full of ice.
That's right.
I'm not going to promise you're not going to wake up in a bathtub full of ice, but it's not going to be for organ donation.
Well, we're pastors. We don't get to stay in the Ritz.
Okay.
Actually, in Hot Springs, the Ritz is not that nice of a hotel.
I don't know if you want to stay in the Ritz in Little Rock either.
So if people want to know more about ARORA or want to contact you guys, how can they do that?
We have an online registry, which is www.donatelifearkansas.org, or they can visit our website at www.aurora.org, or they can call us at 501-907-9150. And we are 24/7. We have a call center that's open 24/7. So we always have calls. If you need information, we come and speak free of charge, and we bring giveaways and goodies and stuff for kids. And we can speak to any organization that has a request.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.